Welcome to Truth Be Told About Going Wild. I'm your host, Robert Hensley, and this is the podcast inspired by the principles of personal rewilding. Have you ever heard of nature deficit disorder? It is a non-clinical disorder that was theorized by the author Richard Louv in the 2005 book, The Last Child in the Woods. And this theoretical disorder, again, not a clinical diagnosis, basically is a proposed set of behavioral problems that result when humans, especially children, spend less time outside. And the things that we see in children that give us a sense or an idea that they may lack this connection to the natural world, right? There are mental and emotional effects such as increased stress and anxiety, depression, attention and focus issues, difficulty coping with stress, a weakened sense of well-being. We see an increase in obesity, vitamin D deficiencies, as well as, cognitive and behavioral effects, such as a diminished use of the five senses, increased aggression and other behavioral problems, and poor academic performance falls along into that. And then we also just overall see a weakened sense of environmental literacy and reduced ecological stewardship. People who just don't know how to effectively connect with or relate to the natural world. And so all of this, of course, is caused by reduced human interaction with the natural world. So if we think about how our world has become increasingly urbanized, how reliant we are on technology, and this pervasive culture of fear that limits how people interact with the natural world, can really lead to these societal and lifestyle changes that kind of increase the probability that our children or even ourselves, adults, can also experience nature deficit disorder. And so for me, I think to my niece and to my younger cousins, and I remember growing up and we were kind of shooed out of the house, sent out into the woods or into the park to play. And, we could spend all day outside using our imaginations, connecting with the natural world, really just getting dirty and having fun. And I see the children now who have very little access to or very little interest in walking away from their computers or their gaming consoles or not having a phone taped to their hand, and and just they have a very different mindset and perspective on the planet, one that I don't know is the most healthy, but who am I to say? That's what the experts are for. But I wanted to talk about nature deficit order today because I think that there are steps that we can all take to really kind of try to solve something like nature deficit disorder. How do we, take a moment to kind of walk this back for our kids, for our neighbors, for our communities? And a lot of this really comes down to simple things that can be done very cheaply, doesn't require spending a lot of money. It's simply as simple as stepping outside, right? Whether you're in a city or if you're in a rural area, you can take a picnic with your family, go outside, eat a meal, share a meal, cloud watch, right? How many of you remember as a child laying back in the grass and staring at the clouds and watching them shift and become different shapes or finding shapes within the clouds? You know, build a bird feeder together, hang a bird feeder, buy a suet block and hang it in a tree somewhere outside of a window that your family can sit together and watch birds and talk about the birds that are coming in and their behaviors and maybe what seeds or things that we see that they eat that other birds don't, or vice versa. Planting trees or flowers, flower gardeners, uh, flower gardeners, flower gardens. Gardens in general are a great way to, again, be able to teach our children about self reliance, growing their own food, about the process of growth, how plants grow, how fruits form, the cycles of the natural world, very important. Um, and this was one that I hadn't thought of, and I saw it on a list and I thought it was great, was digging up worms. Whether you plan on fishing or not, digging up worms and putting them in a can and selling them to a bait shop is a really interesting way to kind of talk about how worms work and how to digest organic material and turn it into dirt. Um, you know, Even making mud pies, letting your kids get their hands in the dirt with a little bit of water and making some mess and having something that um, is just fun and imaginative. Um, the other thing too is check with your local state parks. State parks have all kinds of free programming available to communities that all you have to do is show up. Sometimes they are uh, entirely educational. Sometimes they're scavenger hunts. There are all kinds of things that are happening that, again, are free, that don't cost a lot of money, that allow you to enjoy time with your family, teach your children, and get everyone outside and really kind of curb this idea of nature deficit disorder. Um, Here on the in the Northeast, we're starting to see the leaves changing colors. So there's this idea of, starting the idea of collecting leaves. And what do you do once you have them? They can be laminated. You can create mobiles. We could create a scrapbook with fallen leaves. We could literally just create a pile of leaves on a table and add some fruit and practice life drawing skills, or still life drawing skills. Some really interesting opportunities that, sometimes slip our mind. Adults are just as likely to forget that they can connect with the outside world, with nature, with their local environment, and find ways of spending time and thinking about the natural world right outside their doors. Right. But I thought that it was really interesting to discuss today this idea of nature deficit disorder. Again, it's not a clinical diagnosis, it is a theoretical proposition that does seem to hold some weight. Right. I don't think that it's coming from too far out of left field for any of us. We understand uh, how this happens, and we understand also that there are opportunities for us to curb this, to solve the issue, right, for ourselves and for our children and for others in our community. And it should be part of our greater conversation when it comes to um, how we are utilizing or trying to conserve our green spaces, and understanding the importance of having those spaces available to us. So, just want to say thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you will check out some of what I'm working on with personal rewilding on my website at www.rhnaturereconnect.com. Again, that's www.rhnaturereconnect.com. You can also use the contact form there. Send me a message. I would love to hear some of your thoughts, or if you have questions about personal rewilding or need some ideas of things that you might be able to do with your child or your family in your area. I'm happy to help you find those things. And remember, there are 3 opportunities each week for new content from the Truth Be Told family of podcasts on the Club Paranormal channel on YouTube. That is Tony Sweet with the original Truth Be Told on Fridays, Bonnie Burkert with Truth Be Told Transformation on Wednesdays, and Truth Be Told About Going Wild on Mondays. All of those shows go live at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern on their respective days. And until next time.